I was reading where someone was relaying a story of her neighbor. She said the neighbor had gone and spent a week in an area that supposedly was very heavy with virus cases. The family came back, and this woman who wrote this narrative thought this family should have quarantined themselves for 2 weeks. Instead, the little boy in this family was out playing with some other neighborhood children, and of course, none of them were wearing masks. She wrote about this in a place where other people can comment and respond, and sure enough, it didn't take very long for other people to say that this woman needed to report her neighbor. One woman actually went so far as to say that it doesn't matter if they feel it is right or wrong to report people who blatantly break the guidelines, that they must start to do it. And she said if she saw her neighbor doing something illegal, and she actually used examples such as arson and robbery, that she would report them without a doubt. So this woman was equating not following the guidelines set, i.e. wearing a mask and self-quarantining, to illegal acts such as burning someone's house down and stealing from someone else. Now, when I hear that kind of stuff, that sends up alarms in me, because these people think it's perfectly okay and right to report your neighbor to the police or to the authorities as a first step. I also know of another situation where there was a teacher who had an outside music rehearsal approved by the school system, and this teacher was reported by several parents that certain students were not following guidelines. This was a large group of students outside having a rehearsal, and these parents were reporting it to the administration. A school board member also drove by and reported the same thing to the building administration. I find it all very interesting that this is the kind of society we find ourselves in right now, because it says so much more than what's on the surface. If you live in a community that cares for one another, you wouldn't think that as a first reaction you would go to the authorities and report your neighbor for something you perceived as wrong. I don't think anyone would think that. The first thing you would think would be to go to the person that you perceive to be engaging in some sort of wrongdoing and have a discussion with them, right? In the case of this rehearsal, why didn't the parents go to the teacher immediately? Why did they go over the teacher's head directly to administration? Why didn't the school board member stop his car and speak to the teacher in the moment instead of driving away and sending an email to the building principal? I can understand such courses of action if you perceived your neighbor or the teacher to be prone to violence or somewhat suspect in their personal character, but this was not the case in both of these situations. I can sympathize with the 17-year-old grocery clerk who is being asked to tell random strangers that they must wear a mask while in the store where they work. They truly don't know who they're dealing with. But that doesn't work in these situations because the school board member knows the teacher and the parents know the teacher, and this teacher has been in this particular position for over 2 decades. So why are they treating this teacher as if they can't even go to them and express their concern? Why is it this woman can't even go to her neighbor? I mean, it appeared from her comment that she's had a congenial relationship with this neighbor. So why in the world would she not express her concerns with the neighbor or even try to start a dialogue about what she observed? I find it disturbing because it shows something bigger, right? It shows a deeper problem in society. It shows that people are operating under a fear, living in a fear of something else. There's always that reminder about what's happening in our world, right? You can forget about what's happening around you as long as you're in the 4 walls of your home, but the minute you step outside, you see reminders that there is something happening, and it creates this continual sense of fear in us. This anxiety, this tenseness, that we are reminded we are in this dangerous situation. It creates tension in people. And I think a lot of this response, such as the woman with the neighbor or the teacher with the rehearsal, stems from this fear. So people are turning on one another. They're acting out of fear. They're reporting their neighbors. They're reporting people that they know and have been in community with instead of just going to the person themselves. And I think this says something greater about us as a society, and it's not a good thing. If we live in the kind of society where we are going to report our neighbor, when we perceive our neighbors and teachers of many years as enemies, then I think that's a pretty dangerous place to find ourselves.